Today's webinar is the impact of COVID-19 on corrections and law enforcement, a roundtable discussion. And again, we are very happy to have with us today's panelists, some of whom were present at this year's Corrections and Law Enforcement Conference in September. James McMichael, or JP, will be leading the panel today with questions. I'm going to introduce today's panelists. We have, along with our facilitator, again, Captain James McMichael, we have First Lieutenant Jonathan Ortiz, we have Acting Captain Sean Casey, we have Major Jermaine Gordon, and Captain Broderick Lindsay. So thank you all so much for joining us today. JP, if you want to go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Carlene. I want to first thank everybody for taking time out of their day to join us and be part of this. We initially did this, as Carlene said, during the conference in September. And for us, it was the first time this group was able to get together in person and actually see everyone in person. The group was started back in the beginning of March as all the coordinators for the different detention centers in the region got together to see what challenges we were facing, best practices, what we were each doing, and we met weekly. We're still doing that now, to try and stay up to date with each other and try to do the best that we can to stay ahead of COVID-19. So today I am going to pose 10 questions to the panel, and as we're going through, if questions come up for anybody, please feel free to put them in the chat box and Carlene will present them to us as well. So we'll start off with the first question. In January of 2020, we began to hear about the COVID-19 virus. How did this discussion begin at your agency? Sean, do you want to go ahead and start off?
Sure, JP, I can do that. Thanks everyone for letting me be part of this panel. I appreciate it. When coronavirus first started to become national news, there was a lot of unknowns, a lot of discussions within the organization about what does it mean for us. Luckily, our medical director, who we work really well with inside of our detention center, had a lot of information about COVID as well. And what we decided to do is really take it seriously, I guess. We didn't ignore it. We didn't think it was going to go away. We realized that it was going to become a bigger issue sooner rather than later. So we had some serious discussions, and I'm sure we'll talk later about the actions that we took. But as soon as it really started to bubble up, we took it seriously, started to have serious conversations, and looked at what we could do to help prevent and minimize the spread of it here at the Sheriff's Office.
Again, thank you. This is Major Jermaine Gordon. Thank you for allowing me to be here to represent our perspective in terms of how we handle some things. I think ours for Prince George's County was a little different. Once we heard about it, we kind of were off balance about how we should go forward and the things that we should do. I think at the time, a lot of our commanders were reading a little bit of this, we were reading a little bit of that, hearing a little bit of this and how it was going to affect us. And luckily in Prince George's County, our health department kind of took the lead initially and kind of jump-started which way we were going to go and how we were going to affect or how we were going to change and do things at the Department of Corrections. We always have a perspective that we think that, or we operate from the perspective that it's going to be us and us alone. So that's kind of how we started out, how we're going to move forward with that same mentality.
Okay, Captain Broderick Lindsay, I'm here. First of all, thank you all for allowing me to be here. Very honored to do this. Also, in answer to the question, ours came about, I kind of remember it specifically because it was right about the time I got promoted to captain. It was a sharp correlation, like maybe a 3-day gap from the official announcement when we started getting things in order and divvying up responsibilities, splitting off into teams, and determining how we were going to attack this thing. And I was promoted 3 days later. So that is very firm in my mind. Again, it was more of it was a teamwork approach from our perspective. We had COVID-19 meetings, teams meetings. We immediately started putting out and adjusting operations and procedures. We were reaching out to other agencies trying to figure out the best way to attack this thing through trial and error. And in hindsight, despite the missteps, we took a very cautious yet aggressive approach to just shutting things down and get till we could get things under control. I mean, control and consolidate, those are two key factors that we really adhere to. Contain, control, and consolidate. Other than that, yeah, it was a very good response. I was very impressed with the teamwork among everybody at my agency. So that's pretty much it.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for allowing me to be here. It's my pleasure to be here with everybody. For Fairfax, we reminded all the staff of universal precautions issued by the county, the health department, and the CDC. And we also had discussions on how to adjust our operations and to minimize the spread throughout the facility and other sections of the agency, and the courthouse, and all the other duties that we had. Command staff met weekly, and those meetings also went into the other groups and parts of the agency to review our practices and how we can adjust our operations to minimize and contain everything.
Thank you. Yeah, we took a very similar approach at the sheriff's office, where we met weekly. We brought in Virginia Department of Health representatives, Dr. Varghese, that helped us beyond measure. I mean, he was a great asset and still is to us. As well as everyone that's on this panel, we've been able to kind of learn from one another, see where we have done things good and where we haven't, and kind of I think we've played well off of each other and moving forward with this. Carlene, did you have any questions come up yet?
Hi, I'm not seeing anything yet. So those of you out there, absolutely, please put any questions that you have in the questions panel so we can address those for you. So thanks so much.
All right, so we'll move on to the next question. As your agency began to look at the impact that COVID-19 could possibly have on operations, what did your agency put into place in an attempt to mitigate the impact, such as restrictions on staff, restrictions on inmates, and restrictions on those entering the facilities?
Want me to start again? JP, I can start with that one.
Yep.
Yeah, once we kind of got out of our initial discussions and we consulted with Arlington and Fairfax, I have to say our sheriffs, Beth Arthur for Arlington, Stacy Kincaid for Fairfax, and then Dan Longhorn for Alexandria here where I work, they immediately got on the phone with each other, started to have those conversations. We had a conversation at our level with folks from our different jurisdictions as well. And once it was pretty clear that it was here to stay, it wasn't going anywhere, it was a real pandemic potential, we shut things down. I believe it was March 18th when we officially shut everything down here at the ADC, first and foremost. No more in-person visitation, no more attorney-client visits unless absolutely 100% needed at the time. We took a hard look at our inmate population, who was at risk, who had underlying health conditions, that if they contracted COVID, what would happen. We also looked at our intake procedures. How are we screening people that are coming in off the street? What are we going to do if we screen someone, it turns out they're hitting all of the right marks that they could potentially have COVID. So we set up our booking apparatus outside in our Sally Port so that people, when they were to get booked in, if they weren't committed, they didn't have to come in. So that helped us keep everyone safer inside the facility. So our primary focus was just limiting the footprint here at the Public Safety Center where the jail is located, which also includes the magistrate's office, our hack inspector, our pretrial probation services as well. But mostly the ADC was our primary focus. was about limiting the footprint, because we knew that the inmates who were already inside of the jail, they weren't going to get it unless we brought it in. So we took a hard look about how do we keep it out. And that was our main focus in the beginning.
Follow up what Captain Casey talked about for the Department of Corrections, Prince George's County. We took a hard line initially. We shut everything down. We, as Captain Casey spoke about, we shut down all visiting. We still haven't returned to contact visiting. We have no, even though we never had contact, free contact, we stopped all visiting together, even for lawyers at this point in time. We have gone to a point where we are offering virtual hearings or meetings at this point. We even stopped all inmate movement in the facility, no cleaning, no detail workers. And we took the real step in terms of we took all the inmates out of the kitchen, and we had officers doing all the cooking and delivering of the trays. And we're currently still in that posture at this time. So we took a hardline approach. We went to the point we stopped roll call. We curtailed all movement coming into the facility to one place coming in, one place coming out. So we took some drastic steps, some drastic measures. At that point of the time when COVID took place, we were not in a posture to use teleworking like we are now. So that was a discussion that we had to build up to. And while we've gone to that now, at the time we were not good at that. So we've gotten better in that stance. I would say the most drastic thing we did was put officers in the kitchen to serve. And like I said, we're still doing that now at this point. So definitely a drastic thing we took on.
I can still recall the first meeting that Jermaine was on when he said that, and the reactions that we got from the group of us. And, you know, kudos to his staff for stepping up and doing that and continuing to do that at this point. It was definitely a drastic step. Roderick, you want to go ahead?
Absolutely. First of all, one of the things that we first did to immediately address the issue, there's a bunch of things. One was, you said, staffing. All right, so staff immediately adjusted their operations upon entry of the facility, 100% temperature checks, things such as adjustments of roll call, meaning roll call. We started finding ourselves using the technology that we had kind of put on the back burner and started using it pretty effectively. I mean, things such as roll call, where you could put a roll call out in the email message and make assignments through that, through email message, and everybody knows exactly where they're supposed to go to, so they go straight to their post. So those are the type of things we started actually, instead of thinking about, because we had thought about it a while ago, but now we started using them and putting them in action. And that's what I'm seeing COVID has activated in a lot of agencies, is that the technology that was on the back burner now is becoming the primary. As I go on, let's try mental health evaluations. All of a sudden, those had to be done by video. Visitation, we put a stopgap in for our video visitation using iPads. Also, we had directives that came out for PPE usage, exactly who would use it, when they would use it, and where it was supposed to be used at. As far as acquisition to the ACDF, to the facility, that was pretty much shut down. I think that's commonplace among us all. That was pretty much shut down, and we still are, and many of these things are still in action right now. We have the jail is on pretty much lockdown. We don't have visitors coming and doing in-person visits or even contact visits at this time. I haven't had anyone that I know of who's even asked to have a contact visit or anything like that. They're always asking, hey, look, how can I get a Teams meeting, or how can I get a Zooms meeting with this inmate, or what have you. We've also adjusted court operations also. Courts had to adjust some things are in person, some things are video oriented. So as I said, those are the things we immediately, after our meetings and our weekly meetings, we immediately started dropping in there. And then again, I guess I'm sounding like a broken record, but the guys from Fairfax, Alexandria, We reached out to them. Everybody had a freedom of information things of what we were doing and how you were addressing things. And when that came about, we knew exactly different. Now we tweaked it. It's a little different from agency to agency, but pretty much we knew exactly what we could do and how the game plan would go. So, yeah, those are the things we immediately put into place. And also, like I said, some adjustments in our day-to-day operations. Things still look different to this day as far as how we do things. I come in every day, and it's almost a habit for me to go get my temperature checked, which that was not a habit before.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Yes, sir. So we did a lot of same things. The first thing was that temperature checks. As soon as you enter the building, we actually had to post somebody that became an assignment, and everyone got their temperature checked, not just in the jail, but also for the courthouse or any one of our buildings. We've now switched to temperature kiosks that your card reader won't work if your temperature is not at the appropriate level. And face coverings were mandatory, and keeping a safe distance. Of course, roll calls were stopped like the others. And we also had made sure there was extra cleaning going on. We didn't, the deputies weren't doing any of the cooking, but like Jermaine had to, but there was minimal movement. Visiting was shut down, and all the pro visits were done virtually. Only it was mandatory to be in person. We would use the old regular visiting, so they would still be separated. The courthouse was also shut down, and everything was virtual for there. And civil enforcement still had some things to do, but they were given PPE and to move appropriately. And as much technology could be used, we used it.
Carlene, I see that you have some questions.
We do. So the first question that came in here, it says, good afternoon. I know we at Baltimore County met weekly with our local health department. How much input or assistance are you getting or seeing from your local health departments?
I'll go with that. Dr. Carter for Prince George's County has been a godsend. He's been clear, concise with giving direction. He's been supportive to our agency as we chart out every inmate or every employee that's either positive, comes back positive, whatever scenario he's been extremely helpful in us learning to work through this process and giving us some boundaries and some good, I guess, working conditions to work with. We talk to our health department every day as we share every day our list of inmates that we have positive, to include the list of employees that are positive as well. So we keep them abreast of everything that we do daily. So it's been a good symbiotic relationship.
We here in Fairfax also have a close relationship with our health department. We actually have another supervisor that's assigned to work directly with them to keep them updated. And so it's been a good relationship to get all the testing and anything we needed done for staff or any inmates that were at risk. We also, what I didn't mention before, is we have 4 different quarantine blocks for the different levels of quarantine needed, and was something that we added for people to come in.
At Arlington, we also had a good relationship with our public health. Like JP said, Dr. Verdiz and Dr. Yarborough are excellent. Those guys they make themselves available to you on a drop of a hat. We always have that. I'm quite sure you can all attest to it. We've all had that unique situation where you're like, you know what, I just don't know. And it's nothing but hitting the speed dial. Hey, what do you think about this? Is he this? Is he this? Okay, that's the answer to the question. And it's an open, free exchange of information where they're totally willing to help you out. And we set those as rules. That's how a lot of the things that we do on a regular basis with regard to COVID, because I also have a little portion of my job that covers COVID-19 also, where those procedures come from Dr. Yarborough, Dr. Verdiz saying, hey, look, this is what you should do in this case. This is what you should do in that case. This guy should quarantine. You don't have to quarantine this guy. And we tell them, and we're totally transparent. We tell them, hey, look, this is our situation manpower wise. How do we, how should we be looking at this? And they're totally transparent. And anybody can call them. I mean, any of us in command can call them, and he'll answer the question. They'll answer the question just like that. So bottom line answer for all it is a very good symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, I'll just echo what everyone's already said. The Alexandria Health Department has been excellent throughout this process. We were assigned early on a doctor, Dr. Kim Luke, and a nurse practitioner, a Shine Mechanic, directly to our office. So we have been liaisoning with them from the beginning about employees who are contracting the virus, inmates who contract the virus, what we should do, how we should do it, recommendations on our protocols, helping with mass testing. And like Roger just mentioned, at a drop of a hat, you can call them. I had to call them this weekend on Sunday at 10 o'clock in the morning, answer the phone, and immediately help with the situation. So they've been absolutely very impressive throughout this entire pandemic, because I'm sure they're not only dealing with the jail's issues, but the entire city's issues or county's issues as well. And it's been very, very impressive how much help and attention they've given to us.
That's really great to hear. So we did get a question regarding accommodations, but I am going to save that till a little bit later because I have a more general question about that. So I'm going to skip to this question, and it says, are incarcerated persons getting out of cell time? I understand that there was a lockdown initially, but has that continued? Thank you.
For us, for Prince George's County, they are getting out. We are staggering the number of people we have out wrecking at one time. So it's a continual rec process. We're doing half and half for a unit. One half of the unit is out for 1 hour, and the other half is out for another hour. Then you get into feeding and breaks. So, it's a continuous rotation. Instead of us locking down a certain time of the day to do count and allowing that time to extend, we've changed that and we kept it on a rotation at this point in time. So while their time has been curtailed, we have done everything we can at this point to try to get them out even in that time of being curtailed. It is safer for them to keep the numbers lower and to keep a cohort together so we can keep contact tracing easier for the agency if we do have an outbreak.
I have to echo the same thing. Basically, lockdown was just for the initial. Once we got a firm handle on it, we immediately started thinking of ways to wreck them outside of their cells. Their time out of cell time is not as long as it was before. However, the group is split in half. Sometimes it's quarters, upper tier, lower tier, and they're allowed outside cell time to take care of all their business, telephone usage, showering, rec, all that time out of cell time they can use to do that. And then the next group comes out. That is the major thing when it comes to lockdown. We lock down just to get control of the situation. And after that, you start trying to step back to find ways to allow people to get their out of cell time. It's very valuable to us. So, yeah.
Do you anticipate any changes with that if numbers increase, or is it that you have a system in place that seems to be working?
The system in place. Oh,
Good. No.
The system in place seems to be working for us. If the numbers increase, you adjust the amount of people. The only thing that changes is the amount of people you let out at a time. If the numbers increase as far as going up, then you initially lock down, find out who people who are maybe sick and people who have been exposed, isolate them, and then the regular units, everything separate from that, goes back to more of a controlled out of cell time, rec time. It just, only thing that changes is the amount of time and how many you're letting out. So that's the approach we're taking.
Gotcha. Thank you. I think we can hold on questions. I think we can continue with the questions, JP, that you have. Okay, great. Thanks.
All right, so now I'm going to jog everybody back to the beginning of this and ask you this question. What challenges did you face with PPE and supplies in the beginning? And I think now that we've moved forward in this, we've all kind of got that under much better control than we did in the beginning. I know when we first started meeting, there was a lot of concern about what we had, what we didn't have, what we'd be able to get. So if you guys could speak to that, it would be greatly appreciated.
I can start out. I'll just say that we were woefully underprepared with our PPE gear. That's something that was exposed pretty quick when this pandemic started. We wouldn't have been able to handle any kind of pandemic or any kind of outbreak inside of our jail, let alone a COVID outbreak with the PPE that we had. The biggest thing that we were lacking was surgical masks, face shields, and N95 masks. We didn't have any, basically. So I know we put calls in to Fairfax, to Ortiz and JP and all the folks saying, if you have anything, we'll take anything. They said, well, we can give you 20. I said, we'll take 20. That was great. And whatever they had, that was definitely a challenge. And, you know, there was a point when we had a real scare that we weren't going to have anything for our folks to be wearing when COVID really started to hit its peak at the beginning. But luckily, you know, the city organized a central logistics location. They got some big shipments in. We were able to piecemeal some PPE gear from different friends, like our folks in Fairfax and Arlington, and we managed to survive and get through it. But it was definitely touch and go in the beginning, and it's something that hopefully we'll never be underprepared again for in the future. But it was definitely a touchy situation. We were looking up things online, like what can you make a mask out of? You know, and there was a whole bunch of different recommendations, and we were like, wow, this is where we're at, huh? So it was definitely challenging.
I'll echo what Captain Casey's saying. We went through the same, I think, scare initially, like, what do we need? How much do we need? How much are we going to need? Luckily, in Prince George's County, we had, I want to say 6 churches who were making masks. And I think I still have upwards of 3,000 masks in my office at this point that were made for us. They were coming in boxes and bags, and we had inmates, parents who wanted to drop them off, drop masks off. But initially, our initial intake of, like you said, we didn't have any face shields. We didn't have any N95s in the building. I'd be honest with you, I didn't know what an N95 was. What was the difference initially was grabbing them. I actually wear one when I cut grass, but had no idea I needed this for this, that we were going to need it for this process. So it's been, like Captain Casey said, now that we have seen this, we've done a better job in terms of getting ready and building that store up at this point, even while we're still consuming it.
Well, I'll go. We have a supply that was in good stock, but we were worried about not knowing how long this was going to go on. So we did prioritize to make sure that the people in the ADC had plenty, because that was a high risk, and making sure we kept that population coronavirus free as possible. And we did have a ton of volunteers to make masks for the inmates. We also had some inmates that were sewing and to make masks for the inmates. I myself even did some sewing for some staff to have some masks. But then our supply, it came in. The big problem was the price. You know, before this happened, you know, the N95s may be 50 cents a piece. Now they're $5 plus. So after that, most of the PPE, our Office of Emergency Management then is handling all the PPE orders in a single point ordering, and we send everything to them, and they get it for everybody.
On our end, one of the things we had was pretty much like everybody else. We had a limited supply, but it was a supply. It was there. Our safety specialist made sure we did have it there. But as you know, the volume was what nobody would have ever expected. So we did start putting together a plan on how to store these things, how to acquire them. We had help from our neighbors once again. Alexandria, Fairfax. We had help from whoever we can get help from. We also had another concern was burn rate. The rate, how long should we use these things? How long should we do them, especially for staff? Who should have them? Who should have what type? Because the prices varied between the two. Also, we had, just like Ortiz said, we had inmates doing the sewing. They were making masks for the inmates. They were making masks, and we were getting them put upstairs, having them replaced, having them washed out. I do believe we're still doing that right now. So it was a couple of things, that places where we had to go to get things in order so we could get a process of how we were going to approach PPE equipment, acquiring it, using it, and like I said, the burn rate is what we had to really focus on, because there was a time where boom, 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 it was a bunch of boxes that were used up, and we were like, whoa, if we stay at this pace and we project out, we're not going to make it past this. So we really had to, put lockdown on the PPE. We had to really make it a thing of, look, you need to talk to this person before you go pull anything. So it was an ordeal, but we got through it, and it took a lot of help, a lot of organization, a lot of teamwork, but in the end, we did get through it.
And I echo the point that you just said about teamwork. I think as we go through this and we answer these questions and answer the questions that are put forth from the audience, you're going to see that this was not just a one agency effort. This was across the board teamwork, not only from our agencies with each other, but the hospitals, the Department of Health folks, and our community partners. And I can't say enough for them. We had masks just poured into us from community organizations that just wanted to help out. They were a huge, huge help during this time as well. Carlene, did you have any questions come up?
We do have a few more here. And I just want to reassure the audience that we will get to the questions regarding accommodations. That is coming up, and so I'm going to group all of that together. One person did ask, have inmates been released because of COVID?
I can start that one off. Yeah, I mean, listen, have we released anybody the sheriff's office because of COVID? No, I mean, we don't have the power to release folks because they have COVID. Like I said in the beginning, we did take a hard look at our entire inmate population when it first started and looked at the folks who were at risk age-wise, and we provided that to our judicial partners, just saying, hey, FYI, we've got these folks in here. They're of the age, they have these pre-existing conditions. Just so you know that if they do get COVID in here, it could be troubling for them. They took that information. I think a few people were released who had either time was about to be served or things like that. But moving forward, our inmate population in the beginning, when it started to pick up, I mean, it dropped almost 40% in a matter of a month. It was pretty significant. Now it's started to come back up again, getting to about 80% of what it was before COVID. But I think that the judicial partners have taken on themselves, because we at the sheriff's office never truly asked, because it's really not our place to ask. We're just explaining to them, this is a confined environment. We have our limitations, but we'll handle as much as we can when we can handle it. But overall, magistrates have been issuing a lot more bonds than previously, than have happened before. The judges have been letting folks out on crimes and in cases where they probably haven't in the past. So there has been a big change that I've seen personally over here with how the judicial system has worked as it relates to bonds and releases of certain people inside of our jail.
I know we've increased our numbers that we've released on home detention. I think pre-COVID we had between 47 and 53. We have 192 out currently on home detention. So again, working with the courts, and like Captain Casey said, they have been releasing some people they've normally not released. Our commissioners have been giving bonds, I will say lower bonds than what they normally have been doing to keep our numbers low. And just like Captain Casey, our numbers have increased back to, again, about 90% of where we were pre-COVID at this point. So we are about to find a new normal in the COVID with a full facility at this point in time.
Jonathan, or do you have anything?
Go ahead.
You can go ahead again. Go ahead.
Okay, one of the things with us is pretty much echoing same thing everybody else said, that the court, we don't have the authority to release. However, the courts were made aware of specific inmates' conditions and things that were going on, and they did what they had to do, or change. I'll just say they adjusted their thinking with regard to release and bail and bonds and things of that nature, and our numbers did go down. I can't tell you, I won't offer to tell you what percentage because I don't know that right off, but our numbers did go down. However, like everybody else, the numbers are on the way back up. So, like we said, it's just a matter of, at that time, they were presented with what they had to be presented with, and their ways of thinking have changed since then, right? So the thought process has changed. However, as everybody knows, things out there tend not to change. So the guys are still coming in here, even with a different set of parameters when it comes to their release. So all in all, there was a adjustment that was made during that period of time. I can't say whether it was specifically because people wanted to let people out because of COVID. However, that was something that people looked at and said, okay, what can we do to help out the jail when it comes to these people in this confined setting, and to help out everybody. Just these people in this confined setting. This is not the time. This is not an environment that we want to have just a bunch of people in for, how can I put it, lesser crimes and things like that. So.
Yes, and our situation was likewise. The courts identified a certain number of people and released them to reduce the amount of inmates that were incarcerated. If they had a shorter sentence, they were already released. And of course, the magistrates, they adjusted as well on who they would issue a commitment order for confinement.
So, JP, are we up to the question about accommodations now?
You can go ahead and ask about the whatever accommodation questions you have is fine. I'll adjust the questions I have to make sure that we get the questions in from the audience.
Okay. Well, maybe if you wanted to start, I think in the list of questions that you sent me, I think that there was one that, you know, basically broadly addressed how everybody has been handling persons with disabilities. So, JP, if you want to.
Question number 3, which was, what precautions did your agency put in place for those considered to be high risk? Those who are over 65, underlying health conditions, respiratory issues, unable to wear a mask, etc. I believe that was the question that you're referencing, Carlene.
Yes, I am. So if we wanted to start with that and then branch off, that'd be great.
Okay. Sean, did you want to start off on that one, or? Sure,
I can start off on that. Just as I mentioned before, you know, we looked at the folks that were high risk, the ones that obviously that couldn't get out on any kind of bond, because we do at our jail in Alexandria, we do have a federal contract with the United States Marshals, so we do hold a lot of individuals, usually around 150, 160 folks who are on pretrial, awaiting trial over at the federal courthouse. So the large majority of those crimes are very, very serious, so they're not getting out. So they're closely monitored by our medical staff. What we did with those folks, because they're here for an extended period of time, we put them in housing units that we know that there's a low transfer rate, as in folks who come into those housing units that they're in are going through a 30-day quarantine, 14 days in a medical quarantine, then 15 more days, I'm sorry, in a step-down quarantine unit. So folks that are coming in there, we're pretty confident that they don't have COVID-19 and aren't going to transmit it to those folks at high risk. So that's what we've seen. Folks that can't wear a cloth mask, we're trying to adjust that. We'll give them the surgical mask. We're always trying to find. Luckily, I mean, we gave out our cloth masks. I think there was like 3 or 4 people that had issues with them, so we managed to find different masks that worked for them, and anything that we could do to help to prevent that. I mean, I know that we've had some folks who have come in here and had some pretty serious health conditions, some heart issues and things like that. And our judicial partners have been great. They understand that there's the double risk now for that person. So they've done what they could to get that person basically out of our custody, because it's better for them, obviously, and their survival. And that's ultimately the most important thing. So it's a fine balance for those judicial partners that we have with the risk of public safety and also the inmates' health and well-being. But I think overall, they've done the best they can in a very difficult circumstance.
So for Prince George's County, we did the same thing. We worked with our judicial partners, worked with the judges to see if we can get our high-risk detainees out of the facility. Luckily, or knock on wood, we did not have a great deal of detainees that we considered to be high risk. And the ones that we had were not on the higher scale of being high risk. We had a discussion amongst ourselves and the health department if we wanted to put them in a unit by themselves. Our health department stated no. They felt like if an outbreak did take place in a unit that had just high-risk detainees, it would take hold faster and more aggressive in that. So we kept them in along with the general population. I want to say 25 or 30 that we had, we put them on a higher monitoring list. We checked their temperatures twice and 3 times a day. So we just paid more attention to them, gave them more information to make sure that they knew their signs and symptoms to watch out for, just in case they did start to feel a certain kind of way.
Well, for us, there was the same as everybody else had mentioned as far as any inmates goes. If they were high risk, we would work to get them released. For staff, the county also approved telework for anyone that could, or they, and definitely people who were over 65 were mandatory to telework. And flexible hours for their working. It didn't have to be the strict 8 to 4. It was any 8 hours during that day, as long as they got their work done. And there was also pandemic leave for people that had situations, especially when schools were out, and how to manage your children.
Gotcha. That's great. Can you take a couple more questions along the same lines?
Of course.
Great. So we have a couple here regarding people who were deaf and hard of hearing and the kinds of accommodations that you came up with, because that can be pretty challenging. Can you talk about any accommodations or adjustments you've made related to COVID and hearing loss, particularly because of things like masks, making it difficult to lip read, that sort of thing?
I know I can speak for us. We were already utilizing tablets for communication purposes, for interpreters, and we would use the interview rooms and continue to utilize those. So they would still have the masks on. We would go into there. If we couldn't have people in that same room because of the size of it, then we would have one person in a computer in one room and the inmate with a computer or a Surface Pro or an iPad, whichever we were using, to make that communication work. And I think that was along this entire process, we've all had to think outside of the box. This is something that nobody's ever been faced with, and we've had to use all kinds of different ideas, and like I said earlier, play off of one another, look to see what people around the country were doing, the Department of Health, and just ask a lot of questions.
I think that's the key to it, JP, that you had to be flexible. You have to be ready for audible to be successful in this process. the old score that we couldn't do this or we wasn't doing that, it would not work today. One of the funny things that we were going through at the time when COVID took place was the conversation around teleworking. While the old guard and the old heads and the old guys and females here were totally against teleworking. What are you going to do at home? There's nothing for you to do at home. You can't telework. And those are the same ones screaming, can I please telework? I want to sign up, sign up, sign up. So while we're going through this process, and you guys know I said it when we first started out, I feel like we're making plays up in the dirt in the backyard, and we say, hey, this works. Looks like you're going to catch the ball when I throw it. Let's do it. If it doesn't work, don't do it again. And then when we got together on, for our weekly talks, we'll talk about it. Don't do this because when we did it, it didn't work. So those are the things that I think that you had to go through because there was no pandemic plan. I'm the COOP operator, the COOP commander for the Department of Corrections. I promise you, in my COOP plan, no, it was nothing about COVID-19 in there. And I felt like it was a really good plan, really comprehensive, and really put together. But this chapter did not exist. So coming together and thinking outside the box, as you talked about, is the only way you're going to be successful in this process. And being able to be amenable and humble enough to listen to, everyone and say, hey, Captain, how you doing this? How are we doing this? And be open to those things and try.
I can't tell you the number of meetings that we had at all hours of the day, the night, bringing in not just the sworn staff, but also our civilian staff, our service counselors, our DHS staff, and saying, look, here's the issue we're challenged with at the moment. We need everybody's head in this to figure out how we can make it work.
Thanks so much. Yeah, a lot of challenges, I'm sure. And then are there video visits being interpreted with a sign language interpreter?
For us, yes, we have been doing that now for at least as long as I was the ADA coordinator for almost 2 years. And before that, previously, we brought the iPads in and started utilizing that. But that also, those iPads and that technology have also given us the ability to be able right now to conduct video visitations for everybody and allow the people that are placed in our custody to be able to see their families, especially at this time during the holidays where they're isolated from their families and they're not able to see them like they would have been able to last year. Now we're able to have the ability to get them to have their family on screen and be able to see them a couple times a week. And I don't know if that's the same for everybody on the panel, but we've taken what we were using and just kind of broadened the scope of it to be able to not only work for accommodations for disabilities, but now to spread it out to the entire population.
I kind of believe the ADA position and utilizing the iPads and different technology was the springboard for us. That's why the transition, though it was a little bit uncomfortable at first, we realized that we were already doing a lot of this stuff physically. We just had to adjust what it was for. Video visitation, a temporary thing for video visitation wasn't as hard because we already had iPads and equipment in place for ADA that could be easily utilized and set up appointments. Only thing we did is add Teams, add Zoom, add different features, but it was already there. So, yeah.
Gotcha. So kind of along the same lines, and then, JP, if you want to pick up with some more of your questions, have all of these protocols that you've been putting in place as a whole, have they been protecting patrolmen and detectives and people who, are out in the field, out in the streets? How's that been working?
I can speak to us again. We have one central group that kind of sends out all of the PPE, all of the supplies. They send out a report, and when this began, it was every day. So we could see what everybody was doing, whether it was the police or the sheriffs or the EMTs or whoever it may be. And again, we were learning from each other and seeing what was working and what was not working, and having to make a lot of adjustments when we saw the jail populations go way down. And now they're starting to come up, and they said it's been a learning process for everybody, and it's also been a huge teamwork. You gentlemen want to add anything, or?
Okay, well, JP, if you wanted to pick up with another, question that the questions that you have, and then, there are a couple more questions waiting here. So I'm going to give you a turn as well. So thanks.
And also, just to go back to that last question you had, they talked about the temperature screeners and things like that. That was one of the things that was added in as well. And I think everybody did that across the board. With when officers were coming into booking, everybody was being screened. And for us, it included the officers when they were coming in and things like that. So everybody kind of took the approach to make sure that we were not just looking at our population, but everybody else that was coming into the facility as well.
So we also will alert, now that we are testing everyone that comes in, we COVID test everyone that comes in into the facility. Our returns are about 24 hours to 48 hours. So once we get an arrestee that has shown to be positive, we are alerting that agency that brought them in to, have their ulcers checked and make sure they're watching their signs and symptoms as well. And that's been a good thing as well. They've been very happy that we've been sharing that information with them.
This is actually a good segue into the next question. So what have your agencies been doing to not only stay up to date on the changes that have been going on with COVID, but to keep your staff up to date, your inmate population up to date on changes, and the community surrounding as well? Sean, did you want to start off again?
Yeah, I can start off. First, when it comes to the inmate population, daily announcements by the housing unit deputies, by our Control 1 deputies throughout the entire building, one-on-one meetings with their classification counselors, giving them an update on what's going on. I think that's been a big help. The classification counselors for us have been really doing a great job dealing with the break schedules for all the individuals who are either on a medical quarantine or isolation, both in our first 15 days and our second 15 days. Then as far as our staff goes, I mean, we've done everything. We've went to roll calls when we were able to attend those. We've done obviously email communications, phone conferences, Zoom conferences, and it's still a challenge, that's for sure. Communicating to staff what's going on has been extremely difficult throughout this entire process. I think communication to staff has always been difficult and challenging even before COVID. With COVID, it's been even more challenging because communicating, I mean, we're not huge, but still 240 people is a lot of people who work all different hours and all different days. To get a consistent message out is hard. And as we all know, some folks check their emails a little bit more regularly than others. And some folks in our line of work are just busy. They don't have time to sit in front of their computer and check their emails. So it's challenging. But we've done that. As far as internally, externally, we've done a lot of outreach to different stakeholders in the community. Obviously, a big part of that has been the federal courthouse, both the prosecutors and our federal public defender and our defense attorneys on that level. Then locally, the same thing as well, to let them know what's going on here in the jail. And then also just throughout the community, things on Facebook, things through Nextdoor, other areas like that, just to get the word out about what's going on over here. Our civic association meetings, we have liaisons throughout the city that work here at the sheriff's office in sworn capacities who liaison with our civic associations. They've been meeting virtually, so we've been able to get in front of the virtual cameras and talk and tell them what's going on here at the jail, keeping them informed. And it's worked pretty well. So it's been challenging, but I think overall the right message has gotten out to staff, inmates, and the public.
I want to echo what Captain Casey just said as well. It's been challenging. I think the challenge for us has been, to a degree, has been information overload at this point. Emails have increased exponentially. So many Zoom meetings, so many Teams meetings, so many emails at this point in time. While everyone has a good intentions to get everyone the information, a part of that is an information overload, and to a point where some people are turning off and not getting the information because it's too much. So we talked about that last week, and we want to try to balance that out and put some emphasis on sharing pertinent information, not as much information, and ensuring that the commanders are pushing information down, and be a little bit more personable with your team in smaller groups, more personal contact, using social distance. So, we talked about all those things, but just like Captain said, it's a challenge, and we're sharing so much more information. And also said to me last week, I'm not sure if I'm getting enough emails. I'm not sure how you're not getting enough emails at this point in time. So we are trying, and the challenge is there.
I believe with all intents, pretty much the same thing. The talking, the discussion outside the agency, inside the agency, different stakeholders, it's just increased almost 100-fold. It's the freedom, the free exchange of information, talking to each other from the upper levels, lower levels, outside the agency, inside the agency. Like I said, we're even communicating with inmates whenever there's something that comes out. We are the first ones to let them know, hey, look, this is what's going on before it hits any place else, or before a press release or anything like that. We let them know, hey, look, this is what's going on. This is what's happening. So, like I said, and also our outside stakeholders, we let them know this is what's going on. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with different facets saying, are you guys taking this? What's going on in the jail? What's happening? And I do believe I have recently experienced where I was upstairs with several inmates, and they appreciated it. They actually appreciate the fact that there's a lot more communication. There's a lot more just, hey, look, this is what's going on. Now, we're going to help you with this. This is what we intend to do about it. Whether they agree with it totally or not, they just appreciate somebody telling them something. They're in a situation where they're blind to everything except what they see on the news or what they get from their family. And it's nice when you hear them telling their family, hey, look, this is what they're doing here at Arlington. They got that taken care of because they're doing this, this, and this.
And we have similar situation here. It starts at the top of constantly having meetings about COVID and with other stakeholders inside and outside the agency, open communication with staff and inmates who are affected, for them to let them know what's going on, and participating in regional groups like this one to share information and knowledge and what we can learn from one another.
Do you have any more questions, Carlene?
Hi, I do. We did receive a couple around education and how that's been working. So let me find the one up at the top. Hold on just a moment. Okay, so this one says, so what are the delivery methods that you're using for education services to continue for offenders?
I know for us, we go back to the tablets and laptops, utilizing Teams and Zoom to bring classes and programs and GED to the inmates. That way the folks we have a lot of volunteers and we have a lot of programs that run when we're in normal operations. But a lot of the individuals that would normally be doing the teaching are in that high risk category. And when we shut down the facility to allowing people in, we had to look at ways to be able to continue bringing those programs into the facility So we got the instructors set up, and we've got laptops now and the tablets as well. And we're also working with our partners in the community to bring programs in from them, whether it's linking them into our television system or utilizing Teams or Zoom to be able to do that. Sean, did you want to?
Yeah, same thing that JP is doing in Arlington, we're doing over here. There was a shutdown of programs at the beginning of the pandemic, but we're able to bring our essential programming back, GED, life skills, things like that, via a virtual platform. So we've got the inmates in classrooms, socially distanced, and we got our instructors teaching over Zoom or Cisco WebEx, whichever platform works best. So it's just in a virtual platform now, is how we're doing things.
Unfortunately for us, there's been a casualty. We haven't gone back to education yet. We're not up to speed with the tablets and things like that. We're actually going through that process to load those into the jail, but it's been a process because we have to update our infrastructure. But we are in that process. But right now, we have not gone back to education at this point.
So it sounds like a lot of transitioning to remote distance learning, you know, similar to the school system, I guess. And sorry, Jonathan, I just cut you off if you wanted to pick up.
No, I'm sorry. I was just saying we're in the same situation like PG. We haven't suspended, and most of the instructors are high risk, and the classrooms didn't have the virtual capability.
Gotcha. I had one more question I wanted to fit in here, JP, and then if you wanted to continue from there. This question is, do any of your facilities have treatment services, so therapy or therapeutic recreation? And if so, how are you managing to do that right now?
You know, our Department of Human Services, we're utilizing the same thing. It's utilizing a lot of the technology and social distancing and one-on-one sessions where possible for us. Sean, if you want to touch on that, or anybody else on the panel that may be doing something different.
No, it's the same thing, JP, that we're doing over here. We have mental health counselors who work in the jail full time, who are able to do counseling via virtually with the inmates, in person when possible, and over the telephone. If there's a significant level of therapy that's needed, we will obviously go externally if we can't provide it here. But that has continued. We haven't let that slip or fall behind because of the pandemic.
We're using telehealth. It's all done over iPads, and for them to be able to communicate and get services.
Same thing. iPads are in full use, so they can get services and things that they need to be things that we can provide to them through that particular process.
You want to add
Well, Prince George's County, we have mental health nurses on staff, a doctor on staff. So when something presents themselves as a case, and they're here to address those issues with the detainees.
So we'll move on to our next question. And this is a three-part question. So I'm going to pose this to each of you, and if you can give me your biggest challenge in each of these areas. So with staff, with the inmates, and with operations overall since the pandemic has begun. Sean, I will start off with you.
You know, surprisingly enough, the inmates have dealt with the challenges pretty well overall. I think our staff's done a really good job of communicating the issues, finding ways to still have, allowing the inmates having contact. I think that the biggest thing that's helped, we're giving folks, and we have been since the beginning, the inmates 2 free 30-minute phone calls every week I think that's been huge because we just really have not gotten the level of inmate complaints that I thought we were going to get as a result of shutting down social visitation. I think the free phone calls have helped. I think the video visitations that we're doing have helped. And they're providing a lot of free items during the quarantine period, canteen items that you have to pay for. So that's helped a lot and kept the inmates, under. And also, I think they understand the dangerousness of this pandemic. The biggest challenge with staff is that they having them understand that everybody's managing a crisis at this point. It's not just admin's crisis to manage. It's not just the jail's crisis to manage. Everybody has a crisis. Each individual person is dealing with a crisis because when they come to work each day, they have what they have to deal with here, but also COVID doesn't leave when they leave the office. It's still at their house. It's still with their family. So it's a never-ending cycle, and it's wearing on folks. So we're trying to deal with that COVID fatigue aspect when it comes to wearing proper PPE gear, knowing what to do in the situation when you're posed with someone who has COVID. I mean, I just had a situation the other day where staff was encountering someone on the street they were told had COVID, and their level of protections that they chose to wear when they encountered that person was substandard, and it's just the fatigue. It's just the fatigue of it, and it's hard to get staff to stay energized and engaged and to remember everything that we want them to remember about how to protect themselves and the new protocols every single day when there's no stop with the stress. The stress is here, it's at home, it's everywhere. So those are some of our big challenges.
I'm going to piggyback off of Captain Casey again. I think for staff, our biggest challenge for staff at this point is, number one, is COVID fatigue. Everyone's tired at this point, and now we got to continue to harp on the basics that got us here, that's kept us safe at this point, but it's continuous harping at this point. So we are doing the things that Casey is doing as well. I think we're doing three free phone calls at this time. We're giving free soap, free hand sanitizer. So we're doing some things to try to keep them overall entertained as much as possible. Operational issues that we're dealing with, we're currently dealing with a COVID lawsuit at this point in time. So we are trying to juggle and run the jail and kind of be hesitant to this lawsuit as well. So we're actually trying to balance two task managers at this point, and that's been a challenge because while what we would do operationally that would be conducive or good for the agency, for the inmates, wouldn't be conducive for the lawsuit. So we're trying to balance that out as well every day. And because my officers are working in the kitchen every day, COVID burnout, overtime, and mandatory has increased exponentially. So, we're balancing those things out every day as well.
On our level, let's address the inmate difficulties. It's just getting them used to the process and the fact that they're locked down for a lot longer, that their recreation has changed. One of the things, then there's a balance to that. We've given them more time with video visitation and things like that they really do appreciate. So we find ourselves trying to think of creative ways to balance things out, just like it was said before. We're trying to find different ways to make it more suitable for them to be inside the jail during this pandemic and keep things safe. Staff-wise, adjustment to the process of having certain things here and not here, as far as programming and things like that, and also COVID fatigue. We find ourselves right now at this moment reminding everyone, hey, look, this is what got us here. This is what kept these numbers down. We need to remind you to keep it going. Now, there's a balance. And we'll go ahead. There's a balance in all of that, because in society, things are a little different. So, and unfortunately, what you do in society affects you in the jail. So what we find is that sometimes what's going on the outside tends to bring itself on the inside, and then we have these situations where people have to go out and things like that. So it's just one of those things where you have to play the balance of everybody involved. The inmates and staff both have things that concern them. You have to find a balance between the two of them. So that is a difficulty, because you have to constantly like think outside the box and be very creative. Operations adjusted to things that normally go on. The fact that you have visitation there, the fact that you have certain other things, they create a little bit of a difficulty. Not much of one. As I said, a lot of the technology and stuff that we had, like a lot of you, I heard you're trying to get your to use the iPads and stuff like that. It was kind of a weird coincidence, and JP can attest to this. We got a lot of infrastructure stuff done with our technology because of ADA. And then when this happened, that gave us a jump as far as getting those repeaters in the jail, getting that technology in the jail so that we can get a signal in every unit and things like that. Kind of gave us a jump on things. So operations and different ways of going about stuff. Visiting is different. It doesn't look the same. Programming is different. It doesn't look the same. Those are all things that add a little bit of difficulty you got to get used to. So that's pretty much my answer with regard to us.
All right. Well, we have some of the same challenges of course, starting with staffing, keeping them safe and distance, and staffing shortages for those that had to be out either for quarantine or for childcare reasons because of school homeschooling. So reassignment of staff to cover all over the agency for the staffing shortage is a huge challenge. For the inmates in the ADC, the loss of services and lack of movement, and for all of that they would have from programs to gym to visitation and the adjustment to that. And then with the loss of people getting released early, it affects our workforce in the ADC, regards to the ones that work in the kitchen and cook. There's a reduced staff, so they're burnt out. And the inmates that worked on our community labor force, we can't get as many things done for the community as far as any services outside, from trash to sign removal to cutting grass and landscaping. All of those things are reduced because the number of inmates available are reduced due to them being released. So all of those things are a lot of the challenges, as others have the same.
Carlene, did you have any questions?
All right, we haven't had any additional ones come in. So, and we have about, it looks like 15 minutes left. So if any of you listening have any additional questions, please send them our way. But otherwise, JP, you can continue with your questions. Thanks.
And so as we're getting to that last 15 minutes, I will pose this question to you, gentlemen. What advice do you have for those in law enforcement and corrections moving forward from the lessons that you've learned so far from this? And I will once again start with you, Sean.
Technology is your friend. You got to let technology work for you. You've got to be willing to adapt to changes quicker. You have to look to start adapting sooner rather than later. I think it was Major Gordon who mentioned telework several times. I think that's something we've got to embrace and look at differently. I think technology inside of the jail we have to look at differently. I know we're looking at tablets, hardening our virtual visitation, both attorney and for social visitation. I think you can never have enough PPE gear. And then the question is, what's the next best thing when it comes to PPE? When it comes to cleaning, sanitizing, overall, I think there's so many different things this has taught us that you just have to be always looking for the next best thing. You can't rest. Business is never going to go back to the way it was before. So you have to be ready and willing to try things out, and not be afraid if they're going to fail, because you don't know until you try, and you can't be afraid. I guess that's the biggest thing. You got to move forward. You have to keep moving forward, and fast too. You can't be slow on it, because the next thing you know, something like this could happen again, and you don't want to be underprepared for it.
For me, speaking for Department of Corrections, I think one of the most important things I've figured out is networking. I think a lot of times, or in non-emergency situations, we operate in a silo sometimes, and that can be detrimental to you. Not just in the sense of you not growing. It doesn't give you an opportunity to speak to someone who does what you do, you can bounce information off, bounce questions off, and unload some of the frustrations you have to someone who can speak your language without you having to explain it. You know, everyone likes to say that white shirts or commanders don't go through it, but we have a whole different line of stress. And sometimes being able to have that equilibrium where I can send JP an email or I can crack a joke to JP and he understands from the beginning to the end helps me move through the rest of the day. And sometimes just a tidbit from Casey can give me information, or a tidbit from Lindsay that can give me information that I can share throughout my facility helps us grow. And I think that is what I take from this. You know, you can't operate in a silo. You want to be able to network and know the people in your area and know the people in your industry. And those are the people that can help you grow.
I would have to say the most important thing is flexibility. I think what I've seen, heard, and watched on the news, it seems like the more resistant people are to a quick change, to a change period, it takes them a while, a little bit longer to figure out, I need to do this. I think one of the things that's a testament to a bunch of our agencies is that we reacted pretty quick, and we kept going. We kept thinking of different ways to do things differently. If you look in the news, some people just tried to hold out. Oh, that's not that serious. It's this, and it cost them. It cost them dearly. So to the point where those agencies are reaching out to us now trying to get advice. So I believe flexibility, like that. What was it? Bruce Lee who said it? Be like water, not stone. You know what I'm saying? You have to be able to just take the situation, be flexible. How do we think outside the box? Let's use iPads instead of worrying about how we're going to get visiting. How are we going to do this? How are we going to do mental health evaluations? Let's reach out and do this. And being able to reach out to each other, just like everybody has said, being able to show a teamwork mentality, but it's immediate flexibility. I think the timing, that the immediacy of it is what's very, very important, because the more time you waste trying to figure out, okay, if I should do this, you could have just done it, tried it, and just adjusted to the situation. That's how I feel.
Relationships. Learn from this experience. Maintain those relationships. Your emergency operation plan, your coup plan, keep it updated. Work with your Office of Emergency Management and the health department and all your other law enforcement partners, and maintain those relationships even in non-emergency times, so things can flow a whole lot easier for you.
Thank you, gentlemen. And I will say, getting to be part of this group that we started back in March has been an amazing learning experience for myself, getting to learn from each of these gentlemen. Captain Lindsay talked about how he had just got promoted at the beginning of this, and getting to watch him come into the ADA role and take that over from me, and then jump into the COVID role as well. It's been a great experience to watch him grow as a leader as well. One of the things that I've taken away from this is seeing the leadership of the agencies, not just our agencies, but across the board, whether it's medical, the EMTs, the fire department, ECC, all of them humbling themselves and opening up to everybody's ideas. It didn't matter where they came from. Each of us sitting and learning from one another and being able to bring those suggestions back to our agencies and having our agencies be open to them. The networking aspect of this has just been amazing, getting to know so many more people and see how other people do things and learn from one another. And hopefully, like Jonathan said, we keep this going. Even after we finally get through this pandemic, that we keep this going and we keep these relationships built. Carlene, do you have any questions that have come in?
I didn't see any others. And you used the term ECC. Can you define what that is?
It's our Emergency Communication Center, our dispatchers.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I didn't see any other questions. I did want to ask, though, which of these changes, you know, I think Sean was saying it's not ever really going to go back to business as usual. So what are some of the changes you think are really going to stick past COVID time?
I'll start out with that. I think something besides the technology and telework and different things like that, I think something that we're really going to have to consider moving forward is the quarantine and isolation period for new intakes moving forward. You know, what's that going to look like? Because as we all know, the inmate population is our underserved population. And are they going to be vaccinated? Most likely they're probably not, because those folks don't have access to those vaccines, probably not until they come into the jail, where they have the opportunity to get those. Obviously, some suffer from mental health issues that would make them more paranoid to prevent them from getting it in the first place. So what do? Do we take someone who's coming off the street? What kind of screening are we doing? What kind of, you know, the testing? And so what's that going to look like? You know, what's that initial quarantine period going to be like now for any new intake that comes into our facility from off the street, even after COVID has passed or at least subsided?
I'll be honest. I mean, that's a great answer, Captain. But I have no idea what's going to stick at this point in time. I think everything that we've put in place has been pretty much because of the situation. I'm interested to see once the vaccines have been given out, started to be distributed, will our health departments take a different stand? Will they have a different perspective on how we should move forward? So I don't know. It's going to be interesting, to be honest with you. I think, like Captain Lindsay said, I mean, the flexibility of what we're going to do moving forward is going to be important, and kind of how we go forward in addressing the changes if they come about. So I'm not sure.
Sure, that makes total sense. Sorry, go ahead.
My take on it is real simple. The technology half of it has made people aware of certain things, especially when it comes to teleworking, especially when it comes to, I'll just say this. I talked to an attorney and I talked to a mother of an inmate, and they both said the same thing. They said, I love the fact that I can visit my son or I can see my client without having to get on a bus, without having to go. So those are the things that, and they're the stakeholders in a lot of different situations. And those are the things that I just don't see that genie going back in the bottle. Once you let that genie out and say, hey, look, this works. I don't know how you could do it, but I think people would casually mention, hey, look, you did it before. We can do this. Now, I'm not saying that we will keep it like it is now, but to some degree, I think that that's going to be tough to go back to, especially in areas where it benefits people. I mean, even in society today, you see where jobs are saying, whereas first jobs panicked about telework, now they love it. They're like, okay, I don't have to worry about people coming to an office. I have people working for me from home. I pay them, and you know, there's advantages to it. And I don't understand how those things are going to go backwards. So, as was said, it's going to be interesting. I look forward to just seeing, okay, how's this going to play out? What is it we're going to be able to go back to, quote unquote, normal? Or is it like the new normal, as Gordon said, the new normal where that's it. This is our new normal. You've shown everybody this way and they like it. And so is it going to be able to go back, work itself backwards? That's it.
I would agree. New normal. We have new easy way to do things, and they're efficient. And if they work, we're going to stick with them.
Thanks.
Carlene, can I just say,
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
say thank you to both you and Maynard. I know that you guys probably do not get a lot of recognition for what you do, and people know the hard work that goes in behind the scenes that you all put in. So thank you both for that.
Oh, appreciate that, but it, you know, wouldn't be much without having the people present for us. So it's mutual. Takes team. So, but yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for those who, you know, this is your second round of doing this. And just thank you, you know, everybody for your just being candid, and we did have one person here say, you know, thank you for your professionalism and compassion towards your staff and your force and your detainees. These are really tough times and you are appreciated. So good to hear. So again, I want to thank you so much. The ADA Center is a part of the ADA National Network. There are 10 regional centers across the country who provide guidance, training, and materials on the ADA. So if anybody has any additional questions, anything that wasn't answered, or just a general ADA question, the toll-free number is 1-800-949-4232, or you can email adata.org. So JP, I want to thank you one last time for, you know, bringing your panel here and sharing all of this great information and insight with us.
It's our pleasure.
And I want to thank everybody who listened, and enjoy your afternoon.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.